Hey, g'day guys, it's Calvin from the Cartoon Company.
And Poppy.
And Poppy. Hey Poppy. Hello miss. Good girl. Yes. And Mike. There's Mike over there. Mike gets a bit camera shy. So we're working our way through a 2003 Hilux. And hopefully you've seen the other videos. Prepping the engine. That's this one. You've seen prepping the body. That's that one. And then I've done another one of the first part of making engine mounts, sort of setting everything up, setting a lot of stuff up, getting it ready to go in. We fitted the motor in a hole, and then shit happened. The gearbox, which I had rebuilt by someone else, and hey, not blaming him, but no, he'd stuffed up, and he admitted it. He had one detent in the box in the wrong place, and it wouldn't allow us to shift. These things happen, but it meant we had to drop the box out again, which was not our intention, but we made the most of the situation. And it's a conversion. Have a plan, have a goal. The plan's fluid, the goal is not. The goal is the Hilux will have a V8 in it, and it'll be awesome. The plan was to put the motor in and not pull it out again. That didn't work, so we pulled it out. So the box has been away, been sorted out, now changes gear, which I'm happy about. You want to give me some love? The motor's out, engine mounts have been welded up. We'll have a bit of a look at them in a minute. We've done a couple of little bits and pieces, and we're going to start actually putting it back together now. This one, hopefully it's not coming out again. And I'm showing, I'm not going to say it's failure. We're going to show, I'm trying to show all the issues, and that's normal for conversions, and you'll see it doesn't stress us too much because I've pretty much seen, no, I'd like to say I've seen everything, but I know I haven't. There's always going to be more problems and more issues, but maybe we'll just call them a situation and we just deal with it and move on. Let's have a bit of a look here what we've done. That thing was prepped. That's good. That thing was prepped. That's good. I did a bit of a trip to town the other day and I've got some silicon. Hopefully that is going to be for our intake. Mike has done a little bit of a bracket for the airflow meter, and he's actually popped some riv nuts into the bottom of the airflow meter, and it sits into the factory, into a factory airbox that's actually out of a 185 Surf. And we got a big O-ring for in there, so I went and bought an O-ring. Was the annoying customer of the day at the O-ring shop, and the guy was really great, and he ran out the back and found an O-ring that was just perfect. Mike has mounted the steering dampener, and hopefully we've got that in the right spot. A little bit of guessing there. This motor's running a front sump, and we're sticking with the standard sump, and there's a 2-inch body lift in the vehicle. A better way would be a 2UZ Land Cruiser sump. It's offset to the left hand side, and I've just come across a supplier when this was just about done who could do the sump at a pretty reasonable price, but that's for another day. I'm still really happy with the front sump, and it's going to work just fine. We've changed the oil filter housing. Somewhere around here I've got an air conditioning pump because we have to do air conditioning. The radiator is getting sorted out. The gearbox, Mike's popped the transfer case on this morning, and I did a video about gearboxes. We've done a gearbox loom, so that's all fitted up in heavy PVC sleeving. A custom bell housing has been bolted onto it. It's actually really easy to convert. What we did is we take the diesel one off and we put the custom one on, and it just bolts in. That's really simple, and we've put our own design internal release bearing, which I showed in the first video. We'll bleed that up again, and that will go back in. On the engine, set of headers, clutch. You want to make a feature? This is not helpful, miss. The flywheel, as Poppy is pointing with her tail, is a 10 kilo chrome moly flywheel, specifically designed for 1UZ conversions. And we have some engine mounts, bush type. Mike was cutting the bushes this morning and he thought outside the square and just used our pipe cutters, which was amazing. We found a brand new gearbox mount, which we were looking for. Happened to just be a surf one, which was nice. So I went to the part supplier for the engine mount, or for the gearbox mount. And he started rabbiting on about different options and blah, 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 blah. And looking at the pictures, and he said they all look the same. And he just went to the box and said, see, look at this one. And he threw it on a bench. They all look like that. And it happened to be the right one. So I'm like, thanks very much. That's the one I'll take. And he laughed. We both laughed about it and got on with it. So it was actually quite nice that way. Taking a sample makes a big difference, especially on conversions where I just don't know where some of these parts come from. And Toyota do have little differences just to make my life fun. And I'm sure that's all they do it for. Throttle body has been modified. So we've decided, I wasn't sure what intake we were going to end up with. Going to the silicon intake, hopefully that will fit. A few stuff like brand new alternator, power steer's been rebuilt. Fan, oh, it's really tight. For the fan, I tried to get over 2000 CFM, and that can be quite tricky to find. This one is a Zergo. I went and got a Meridyne. The Meridyne wouldn't fit in this engine bay, so I'm going to use the Meridyne on the next job, and this one, which I had allocated for the high ace van, is going to be used on this. Just in the design of the motor, just in this design, that little bit is a little bit smaller in that motor design. We will be fitting a second fan to this vehicle on the front for the air conditioning. A little bit of other stuff, pedal rubbers, which Mike was worried that there was a B for a brake and a C for a clutch, and the one he took off was an A. One of my cars got G written on it, for general maybe. General. Okay. Okay. We're not allowed to say gay anymore. It's not politically correct. We're not allowed to say that. What do you think of this gearbox? Oh yes, that gearbox. What's your thoughts? You're saying, shove it in the hole, boys. We will. Good girl. And so it all begins again. Bolt it together, put it in the hole. Shush. There will also be a separate video, kind of separate video, on the main wiring of this vehicle. For those that are interested. It's going to be, I'll probably try and do quite an in-depth one, so you get a bit of an idea of what is involved. So we're into it, and we'll give you a bit more of an update once we've made some progress. You hassle me about not telling about the fuel lines. Where's the... Oh, head out.
So I said over there.
Over there? I never know where over there is. We've also had the fuel line crimped up, and we've had some power steer lines made up. And there's some little bits that Mike's painted and put somewhere.
Oh yeah, they're having the spare tire to be as you.
Right, in the painting bay. And we've sorted out an air conditioning pump and some lines that go into it. We'll do a little bit of a video on air conditioning pumps. Why don't we bolt that on before we put it in? Oh, you're putting it up, put the mounts on anyway. I think I might have found all the bolts for it too. There were no air conditioning bolts for it.
Wasn't one of your videos someone asked a question that can you use the original fan pump as
power steer?
Power steering. That'd be interesting.
I've seen some JZ guys do that stuff with it. Nothing I've never needed to. because of what we do. You know, I kind of worked out a system that works for me. So you kind of repeat it, and unless you come across the problem that you can't solve, we've got Sean Sylvia coming. It doesn't run a power steer pump on the engine.
Electric.
No, yeah, electric. Sorry, yes, electric. So it's got an Astra one, and individual coils.
It'd be interesting to know the power draw for that compared to the power draw on the alternator to run the...
Yeah, that's right. I've done some of that sort of testing on the dyno, like with the Sora, like a couple of horsepower difference stripping out the gauze out of the airflow meter. It was on an aftermarket computer, but it was a couple of horsepower difference, you know, and actually measurable. And I find that stuff quite interesting. Engine mount bolts.
Which ones? The ones that go into the engine.
Like that. It's a stock standard with the flare on it, and Mr. Certman can't complain because they're a standard bolt. And
so those two?
Yes.
Need two more then.
It was good to find extra drive shaft bolts with the proper washer, proper shank on the drive shaft bolts, the proper ones for the gearbox cross member, proper bell housing ones.
Not touching.
I told you it was close. Did I tell you I found a 2UZ sump?
That's handy.
I can find brand spanking new 2UZ sumps, and it'd fit beautifully in this job, and it would be up here,
Why don't you get one of them then?
and you'd get like this much clearance, and the pan would sit over here.
All this pissing around.
I know. I don't actually know how it would go on this mount here, because I've used them in Prados. I haven't used one in a surf. I think you're going to have to move it down a little bit. I'm glad you've just tacked it. I think you're going to have to move it down. How many mils?
One, maybe two.
I think we need 5 mils of clearance. And we hope that the Cert man is very generous with us. You're going to get it. You can move it down 10 mils here. It's only because there's a guard on it. Actually, get up here, Mike. Go again. Okay, so it comes up there. No, it's touching there on the... Mike. There's a lack of continuity.
Just
Cut the cover off? Yeah, we don't need a cover. Right, I need to... Here you go, I'm on the engine lifter, we're good. I think if I use the cardboard measurer, I've got the thinnest piece of cardboard possible. Go. At no point could I not move that cardboard.
That's fine.
But at one point it did get quite tight. Like it got firm.
You could still move it.
I could still move it. Definitely, I could still move it. Bring it to the middle as it comes up. We've got plenty of clearance on the main shaft. Your main shaft's got right there. And it's because it's moving. It's actually being pushed away by my piece of cardboard. So in fact, it's touching there, but my cardboard is pushing it away. Yeah, that's fine, just move it. I think if you move that down 10 mils, we'll be fine. You didn't need me to fit the motor at all, did you? You did a beautiful job. You did well. And it bolts up, and it's mounted. Why didn't you put the through bolts? You allowed it so it can move.
No, I just didn't bother.
You're just going to let it sit there, man.
For easy extraction.
Mate, you did bloody well dropping that in by yourself. How about I give you a hand with the gearbox, seeing you did such a good job with that one?
Nah.
No, you can do it on your own as well?
No, you can do it on your own. Fair is fair.
I'll put the gearbox in if you can wire it.
Yep.
And you can make it run.
Yep. Way to get some hours up.
And I'd zero pay if I have to fix it.
Sweet. Just keep going.
Have you got the airbox bolted at the moment?
Yep.
I think we're going to need a shorter bolt.
You said that the certifier wants to see a couple of threads, basically.
I think that's like 10 threads. Yeah. I'm not sure I've chosen the right AC pump for you. That one's got the big clutch on it. So this one's got a smaller clutch. And I think it's got the same feeds on it. So if it gets stuck, if you get worried, I think the overall length's probably about the same here, but that one's got the big clutch around the outside. So if we need to swap to this one, that's fine. That one there is a VVTi one, and it's got a PWM solenoid here. It's got a speed sensor and a PWM. So I try to avoid those ones.
It's different mounting to it.
No, mounting is the same. It just looks different. So they will all interchange. All 1UZ blocks are pretty much the same. So that's great. That the power steering changes position and the reservoir can fail. But that AC pump is just the control of this one, and because we're not running aftermarket computer, I don't have a nice PWM for that valve. So it's easier just not to use it. It's easier just to swap to an early one, which has just got the speed sensor, which we don't use anyway. So if we do have clearance issues, slam that pump on it. How are we going to get on with the throttle body, you reckon? Have you got a clever way of cutting this now? Where is the throttle body?
Over there.
How about I use this one while we're looking?
It's reciprocating straight through.
Mate, I reckon that's just about perfect. Okay, so you're going to need to trim this very carefully on an angle. Or do we cut that lip off? And so when it pulls, we don't have to cut the tube. If we grind this bit off, and this pushes all the way up to our tailpiece, and that might get us enough angle. Hose clamp goes straight around it. Then we glue this together, and even if it rubs on the master, it won't actually matter because there'll be a bit of steel. It's a bit of alley in the middle. And then a little length of that, pretty well straight.
Well, you haven't much options other than straight.
Correct, but it's getting the angle between the throttle body and there, and we probably need that. I think we'd take that lip off, see how it looks. It saves us having to try and cut this, isn't it? You've got gearbox to go in, the drive shaft. Now we had the drive shafts balanced and checked, so they're all ready to go in. And you've got drive shaft hoops to do. You might as well do drive shaft hoops while I'm doing the wiring. And you can list up. You can do this bit of wiring for me. And you can do the main power supply that comes around the bottom of the engine. This is one that was fitted into the cooling system. Yeah, that one. So that goes up to the battery. You can do that wiring. And then this wire here is the main start trigger. That goes into that plug as well. So what's going to happen is the alternator loom and the main start power is going to become one loom effectively when it comes up into this area. So this goes to the battery that we don't have yet. This is the alternator wiring. I'll give you terminals for that, and you can amalgamate it into this one, which goes up to a battery terminal. So you can sort that as well. You did those injector plugs on that other loom so well, we're going to have your wiring ace by the time I'm finished with you. You're going to go, sweet, I'll just wire that up, piece of cake.
Easy.
Learn one at a time. Breathe the lines all into there. That's good. Loom's good. I've got the heavy end.
Yep.
We need to breathe that clutch, that bearing too. You can do that.
I don't know how to do this.
You're about to learn then, aren't you? Why did I get the heavy end? I'm the little bugger. That's nice. Mate, I'm sure we've done this before. Yeah. Now it does change gear this time. Bring it forward. Then bring it in. We're not quite on the right angle of the dangle, so take the back to the passenger side, please. Yeah, that's nice. That's it, brother. That's starting. Just a little bit more. Yep, you're on the dowels. You're pushed up to the dowels, right there. Sitting into the dowels, you're done. Yeah, fix the fluid out because you've bled it. So actually, it'll pop that bolt out because it's actually compressing that cylinder and ooze fluid onto your face.
Something you want when you ride out a moving box.
Yeah. Do you want me to hold that?
No.
Do you want me to hold that? I'll get it up a bit higher, right? Bit easier? Can you totally cover them in anti-seize? They're real prone to seizing because they go up through the chassis. Good morning.
Good morning.
You do talk. Mike is working his way through the list. We've got the list. We got a list, man. It doesn't actually say take motor out, sort gearbox, put it back in. I don't think. It does say balance the drive shaft. We can cross that off. Well, you right there?
Yeah, fine.
Weld, melts, yep. Weld, yep. So we've got a few things to do. I think we'll do a separate video on the inner guards because that's relative to other things. Mike's going to put this little plate on up there. Factory, all the plastic, the edges wear off them and they fall to bits and crack. So he will come up with a solution. And he is particularly enjoying this morning with his air ratchet. I'm starting to regret buying you that tool. So
The only way to shut you up.
I'm glad it makes you faster.
Done.
We're going to have a little bit of a chat about driveshaft angles because we have moved the gearbox up. We've made up this gearbox mount and everything's moved up. So as long as we keep the engine on the same plane, we're okay. This one was tricky. What I would normally do is I would normally measure like the center of the drive shaft or another point, and then I would measure the center of the crankshaft relative to a certain place on the chassis, and I'd move them both equally. So basically if I'm moving the motor up, both sides move up, so the crank right through the gearbox shaft all stays on the same plane, and that retains the proper gearbox angles. The idea is we have this angle, that bit of the angle the same as the diff angle. And if you're paying attention, if you've got a protractor for eyes, they are not presently the right, but the diff will move when it's on the ground. By maintaining that diff angle, generally you get much better results. It's not something that I actually pay a heap of attention to, because I follow that same principle of trying to lift everything evenly, and it's always worked out pretty good. But it's something to certainly be aware of. And also drive shaft phasing, so checking everything's phased correctly. This drive shaft's been over, it's been balanced, it's been all phased up properly, and we've kept it fairly standard on this one. The last one, we changed the position of the slip joint. The problem we were having is the weight here was spinning the internals of this bearing, and it had destroyed some bearings, some hanger bearings. We can see some balancing here. For law in New Zealand, for certification, we will need to put some drive shaft hoops in. It only has to be on the rear drive shaft. Does not have to be on the front one. Mike has fitted this little unit here, so if anything falls apart in there, that should hopefully catch it. And we have to have drive shaft hoop on the front drive shaft, and after any join on the front of the rear drive shaft. So we will be putting in some members to hold some drive shafts on this vehicle. I am expecting this drive shaft to come off again while we're doing that process, but it's looking really good in place there. Little things Mike's been doing this morning. Oxygen sensors, now brand new. You probably want some wires to connect them to. He's put some bolts in the bell housing, which is nice and simple. You just use that big long extension as shown earlier. What else has he been doing this morning?
Not much.
You put some nuts on those engine mounts? Not yet.
Yeah. Do a sway bar.
Oh, you put the sway bar up too?
No, I said I could do a sway
Oh, you could do, yeah. We can put that sway bar up now too, don't we?
lacking bolts.
You'll have to find some again,
Straight new.
if necessary.
New for all them.
Yeah, it's a pain when there's just not all the bolts are laid out nicely. This one will have to have a catalytic converter too.
They all have to have a catalytic converter. No.
So our rules on catalytic converters are, if the engine came out with a catalytic converter, it has to have a catalytic converter. If the vehicle came out with a catalytic converter, it has to have a catalytic converter. Or if it's not practical to fit one, then you don't have to have one.
It's not practical.
It's not practical. Unfortunately on this one it's kind of hard to say, because it had a catalytic converter by this gearbox. And the motor did definitely come out with a converter. So when the exhaust will come down, it'll come down through here. The front pipe, it'll come under this drive shaft. It's like a drive shaft hoop. And it'll merge in this area here by this crossmember. And we will put a catalytic converter in that department there, up in there.
On
And
wing nuts.
what?
On wing nuts.
On wing nuts. Shh. The thing is, because of, dropping in heat, it may not actually be that efficient there, but in fact it was a V6. It was a V6 and it did have it here. So it should be fine. So with this here, if you can just undo those and check that this whole mount isn't flexing. Actually in the middle. Ah,
Pretty straight on there.
that's looking pretty good, eh? No, it's in there where it's trying to twist internally, so it's sitting fairly neutral. Can move up and down. Nice. Oh no, well, and the rubber can move up down. Yep, that looks good. Stood up again, and we'll just watch it. Now we've obviously got enough of a tweak on that now. It's good. Happy. Oh, good morning. Hey, get down. Get down. Good girl. Sit down. Good girl. Get up. Get up. Good girl. Good girl. Sit. Sit down. Good dog. Make sure you put the nuts on the throttle body if you're doing that intake.
What about the bolts?
You can put the bolts on it too. Firewall clearance looks fantastic.
I've seen better firewall clearance.
Clearance checking. Oh, look at that. It's a piece of cake. Hit the side. Oh, look.
Heaps of movement in the motor.
Heaps of movement. It's those pressed together mounts, man. When you press them that tight, they don't move much. You might give that dipstick a bit of a straighten too, eh? Bring it up here more.
Yeah.
Just being fussy.
Yep.
Just being pedantic, eh?
And then we'll pretty much start.
If I'd done the wiring, I'll get a battery tomorrow.
Have it wired on Thursday.
Have it wired Thursday, end of the week, have a run, drive it out. You got to box, you got to oil the box, and you've got to do drive shaft hoops.
You've got to do wiring.
Ratio.
Hey, I'm in no rush.
You didn't blank that off.
Yeah. Why is there brake fluid in there?
Why is there brake fluid in the brake boys, right? Because that's where you put it.
Yeah, but I emptied that.
Yeah, there's always something you can't get down the bottom of the reservoir, isn't there?
No, but I emptied it. Like
Well, you-
out of both things.
You missed that bit.
No, I emptied it.
We probably should bleed those brakes too. We could run the bleeder over them.
You know? I thought you wanted to take them apart.
We probably should check them too. So that's on your list too. I'll put that on your list and then I'll race you for wiring. I've actually got a sporting chance. That intake is looking fantastic. Igniters. I'm going to give you the igniters. I need a place for them to be mounted. Because I'm going to bring the airflow meter.
Down there.
I'm going to bring the airflow meter wiring along here. Because I can bring it just out to there. So that's nice and simple. Igniters. Either over here, I suppose.
Yep.
Or over that side.
No, that's it.
Or on the firewall.
They always go on that side.
Only because that's where they are on the loom. I can put them wherever I want. So I'll get you some igniters. If you can mount them for me too, please. I'm really impressed. That intake came up lovely, doesn't it? It's nice.
Would have been better in like red or something.
You can do any colour you like. As long as it's black.
Yep.
Does Toyota do bright red? We're not building a hot rod like I did with that wiring loom. Trying to make it look like Toyota did it.
They did, yes. Suppose they did that.
No, they would have used a flexible hose.
Yeah.
They also wouldn't have used mounts with very little movement in them either. They also didn't put a V8 into a Hilux.
Yeah, they did.
Which one?
Well, the American ones they did.
Tundra. It's not a Hilux. Power steer lines look pretty good. Yeah, that's sort of... that's sort of how I envisage it, but I kind of thought possibly more about there.
Yeah, whichever works.
So I think about there looks good. It's got a nice curve. So could we come up under here?
Well, that's what I tried to do before. It just looked a bit weird.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was coming up through there like that, so it sort of comes up with them.
Yeah.
And then if we shorten that curve, maybe just put a bit of protection through here. Actually put a protection right up because that's metal there. Bit of protection up through there. Like that. I reckon that looks about right. The mounting of your igniters looks lovely. Yeah, and just bring those hoses up together, just where it comes, just a bit of covering that those bolts. It's going to careful it doesn't rub on there. You could just about get I don't know, something to stop that. Any rubbing, any potential rubbing there. Secure it on, bit of rubber around them, secure it on. There's nothing down here to rub on. Comes down to that cooler nicely. Yeah, looks good.